extraterrestrial beings, aliens, little green men. A concept that's fascinated humans for years. And rightfully so. The universe is 13.7 billion years old.
So they say.
And the Earth is just a small portion of that. So you have to ask yourself, do you really think we're alone?
So we are here in Kingston, New Hampshire at Greenwood Cemetery late in the evening on this overcast, chilly afternoon. We're looking for the final resting place of Barney and Betty Hill. Over here where Renee's standing. Ah, 2 American flags. Yep, the interrupted journey. And somebody even left them a little alien. Barney Hill Jr. of the interrupted journey. Died in 69. And right next to him, Betty Hill of the interrupted journey. Betty's lost her little alien.
This couple was one of the first alien abductions. At the time these two were married, it wasn't very common for interracial couples back then. Barney was an African American male, Betty Caucasian female. They were involved with the NAACP, very heavily involved with like civil rights movements. Barney worked at the post office. Kudos, Barney.
Yeah.
I, too, was a post office worker.
Power to the postal workers.
They don't have an easy job.
No,
I will
they
give
don't.
them that. It's very hard work. And Betty was a social worker at the time. So that is the reason why people or someone has left a little green alien on their plaque, is because of the abduction that they had encountered, and the reason for the interrupted journey, because their journey was interrupted. If I'm remembering correctly, this couple had been married for about 16 months, but they had never officially got like a honeymoon. So they had decided to make a trip from their home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, up to Niagara Falls and Montreal. And on this particular evening, they were coming home. They had made it to Vermont, and I think it was around 10:30 p.m., and the plan was to be back home by 2 a.m. But their journey was interrupted.
September 19th, 1961. Bonnie and I driving home from Montreal. Saw a strange light in the sky, which changed direction, came in, started following us. In an area known as Indian Head, it came out over the highway, stopped in midair, and Bonnie got out with the binoculars in an attempt to identify this craft. You know, the old-fashioned straw hats that men used to wear, the flat crown and the brim, that's what it was shaped like. And then along one side, it had a big, big picture window, and it had dividers in it. And as he's looking up at it, and he could see people standing in the windows looking down at him, and the craft began to descend, and he had the feeling they were trying to kidnap him. He ran back to the car. We went speeding down the highway to avoid capture, and then later they were standing in the middle of the road blocking our way.
Betty and Barney Hill. We've already been to their graves, but their story alone captivated the public and changed the way we thought about alien abductions. It modeled our thought process regarding it. Now, their abduction was not the first. And people had said they'd seen UFOs years before what happened to them happened. But it was just because theirs was so significant that it changed the way we thought about everything. So let's kind of paint the scene. I told you before, Barney worked at the Postal Service. He drove 60 miles to work and back. Betty, her job was just as tiring, many cases as a social worker. The couple needed a break because all of their spare time was devoted to their church and activities related to the civil rights. So, one weekend, they come up with the idea. We've been married for 16 months and we haven't had our honeymoon. We need a break. Grabbing what they could, the banks were already closed. They hit the road with $70 in their pocket.
That'd be money back then.
On the way back, they were tired. They stopped at a diner to get some coffee, kind of recharge to make the rest of the journey home. The diner, according to what I read, was located in Vermont, approximately 10 p.m. So, in their mind, they could make it back to their home around 2:30, 3 a.m. On top of it being already late night driving, weather was a factor also that night. It was raining, windy. Apparently there was an approaching hurricane coming. Now they would have we're speculating from what we've read through this way because they had another reason to get home quickly that night from something so terrifying that they would start seeing in the sky. It states that just south of Lancaster, which you see on the top of the sign, that they would start seeing an unidentified object in the sky. But this particular path down Route 3 is the road that would lead them to their interrupted journey.
And Route 3 goes right where this car is, through Lancaster, and then right up that way.
We've made it just about 3 miles south of Lancaster. Now, it would have been maybe around this location that Betty Hill, on the night of September 19th, 1961, would have started seeing strange lights in the sky. We don't have a definite location. It just gives us the proximity of just south of Lancaster and 70 miles away from the diner that they happened to stop at in Vermont for the coffee. Betty reported seeing a light in the sky that she thought was a falling star. Now, what would have made this not a falling star was the fact that instead of falling toward the Earth, it started moving up toward the moon and the planet Jupiter. And it grew larger and brighter with each mile they drove. Now, she happened to mention something to Barney about it, but Barney kind of brushed it off and told her it wasn't nothing to really worry about because he was an avid plane watcher and a World War II vet, and he was like, it's just a satellite. Probably went off course. So they kept driving, but kept their eyes on the strange light as they went along. As the Hills continued their way through this curvy little 2-lane rural road, they noticed that the light was following them, zigging, zagging, hiding behind the trees, the mountains, then suddenly reappearing, almost as if it was playing a game of cat and mouse with them. Now, Betty at this point was like, Barney, you need to pull this car over because I want a closer look at what this is. Curiosity gets the best of them, and Barney pulls over just south of Twin Mountains. Now, where we're sitting right now is roughly about 2 miles south of Twin Mountains. Now, it's reported that they pulled over into a scenic picnic area to do two things: to check out the lights and let their dog out to use the bathroom. Now, once again, I'm stating we don't know for sure that this is the exact location, but it is what we think may have been somewhere in the general area. There is picnic tables here at this particular spot, and I think I just put my finger in dried bird poop. There is a dog walk just behind me over there where people can let their dogs out. Now, granted, this was the year 1961. Things have changed. So, but for the sake of this video, this is our spot.
I mean, and it is the only area like this we've seen so far south of Twin.
So put yourself in the Hill's shoes. It's dark. You're staring up at this New Hampshire sky through some binoculars. If you were Betty, if you were Barney, you're just looking up.
Barney, you don't get nothing.
But Betty observed an odd-shaped craft flashing multicolored lights, and she said it traveled across the face of the moon. Now, she stated that her sister had claimed to see a UFO before, and she was convinced that that's what she was staring at now. Now, Barney tried to dismiss it once again, saying that he thought it was a plane traveling toward Vermont on its way to Montreal. But he quickly changed his mind whenever these lights descended rapidly in their direction. That's when, of course, Barney himself started getting really spooked out by the situation. Really didn't want to alarm Betty too much. They got back in their car and continued their travels down Route 3. Our next stop, we are standing in Franconia Notch. Now, it's reported that the Hills have made their way through this area. They're slowly driving, just keeping their eyes on the lights that have been playing with them and following them up until this point. Now, it said that at one point the object passed above a restaurant and a signal tower on top of Cannon Mountain, came out near the old man of the mountain.
So we're not sure which one this is. Cannon Mountain may not be this one. It may be the one on the other side that we can't see, but we know we're in the area because right back over here where these vehicles are going, there was signs saying Old Man of the Mountain and Cannon Mountain, this exit. We just kind of pulled off here at a little scenic area. But
Yeah.
we do know that Cannon Mountain and Old Man of the Mountain is on this side. So it's either here or the next mountain over that you can't see from down here.
Now, it's important to note that through this particular little section, they didn't stop like we did, but we just wanted to stop to kind of give you guys a shot. This would have been them driving through this area. But she reported that the craft moved erratically and bounced back and forth in the night sky, and that it was at least 1.5 times the length of a granite cliff profile, which was 40 feet long, and that it seemed to be rotating. Pretty terrifying stuff. At this point, I would have pooped my pants.
Yup. Because at this point, it's been following you for a very long time. It means it wants you. It wants to pull a Cartman.
And, you know, I know we've said it repeatedly, being that this is 1961, I mean, they were probably like the only car on this road that late at night.
Oh, yeah, because I doubt back then it was a busy interstate like right here, because Regional 3 or Highway 3, whatever you want to call it up here, turns into Interstate 93, and then they kind of separate on down this way. So they kind of merge together and then separate again.
For the next stop, we're here at the plaque dedicated to Betty and Barney Hill. Now, this kind of gives a brief description of what happened that night. And we are roughly about 1 mile south of Indian Head Trail, which is where reportedly the abduction took place. Now, this would have been the site where the craft actually comes and hovers in front of the vehicle. It's at this point that Barney reaches back, gets a pistol out of the back seat, sticks it in his pocket, jumps out of the, I think it was like a 1957 Bel Air they were driving, runs to the front of the vehicle, but could not reach into the pocket to actually grab the pistol. It was like as if something were holding his hand. Now, he is holding the binoculars that Betty had earlier, and he is looking into the craft, and he describes it as being pancake-like. Now, within the craft, he is able to see, he reports 8 to 11 beings, which all kind of move to the back of the craft with the exception of one. And it's almost telepathically, it tells him to keep looking and not to put the binoculars down. So now there's 2 different reports that I've read. One states that he ran back to the car and tore off, and they started hearing these kind of erratic beeping sounds from the trunk, and it's at this point that they feel drowsy and pass out. The other version, I guess, they get taken at this point, like without getting back into the vehicle and tearing off. Who knows? Either way, they get abducted. And they end up miles down the road in what some locals told us last night in Thornton is where they woke up, unable to recall any memories until later on in their life. So we've made our way to Thornton, just off of Route 3. Now, from what I told you before, some locals said this is where they ended up waking up. I have read that it was also, some people reported it could have been Ashland. Needless to say, the couple woke up. They lost approximately around 2 hours worth of time. They continued their drive home and made it there just before the sun come up, and were kind of foggy, you know, trying to piece together what had happened to them, and immediately went in to search their lower half because they just felt weird. They noticed some differences when they got home, like some tears in Betty's dress. She noted that there was a pinkish powder on the material. Barney noted that the strap to his binoculars was broken and scuffs along his dress shoes that he had on, but neither of them could recall damaging the goods. Betty actually hung the dress outside. The powder blew away. She ended up tossing the dress and then changing her mind, hanging it up in the closet. So basically everything went fuzzy after those strange beeping sounds. Well, on the 21st, which would have been the next day because they would have arrived home on the 20th, they reported it to the Air Force. Air Force basically did like an interview that took like 6 hours to do. And in the following days, Betty started having nightmares. Now, the nightmares started approximately 10 days after the abduction and lasted for a total of 5 days. These were nightmares that she reported were more intense than anything she'd ever experienced. And she told Barney about the nightmares, and Barney just kind of blew it off, and he was just like, whatever, they're just nightmares. So the next month, she started actually keeping a journal and writing down the events of what was happening in those nightmares because she couldn't get it out of her mind. She would think about it daily. So in the nightmare, she reported that there were several men about 5 feet tall that surrounded their car in the woods and made them get out. Okay, so let's fast forward now to about a year later. they were kind of introduced to the concept of hypnosis to figure out what had happened to them during that time. So both of them underwent hypnosis. Barney's account to what he said was, it varied differently from Betty's. Betty stated that they were separated upon entering the ship, and that they were probed like with needles in their arms, spine. They took clippings of fingernails, hair. But she said that she was able to communicate with the leader in English, and they actually joked around. She asked where he was from, and he was like, well, if you don't know where you're at, how am I going to tell you where you're from, like where I'm from, basically. And I read even that he had said something about sending a book home with her or something. I don't know. It's kind of just like this joking around little experience, whereas Barney's was completely different. His was a little bit like he reported more scary, and they didn't talk to him in English. It was basically like telepathically. So it was kind of concluded that maybe Barney picked up on some of Betty's dreams and kind of made his own spin on it. That was like the thing that they were saying, that all of this was coming from, was these dreams, like they really hadn't been abducted. So that was one theory. Another theory is that they truly were abducted by the little grayish men they said they were. So, also while under hypnosis, Betty drew a star map, which was later published in a book called The Interrupted Journey that the Hills helped make. And an astronomer actually took this map and figured out that it was part of the Zeta Reticuli system, which is why this incident is sometimes referred to as the Zeta Reticuli incident, or known as the Hill abduction. So, you just have to decide for yourself. Do you think the Hills were really abducted? Barney died early on, I think it was 49. He passed away from a cerebral hemorrhage, while Betty went on to become a celebrity in the UFO enthusiast.
This is at a local gas station here in Lincoln. A picture of a gray alien. Betty and Barney Hill, September 19th, 1961.
Huh?
They even got that little car. Then over here beside it says your own stories. People wrote on it with marker and chalk. So this is inside the gas station. They have old article clippings. Looks like there's other stuff other than the dress at University of New Hampshire.
So, according to this, it says they did get back in the car and speed away toward North Woodstock. And that at that point, they would have heard the weird noises coming from the trunk, and then it kind of blacked out.
Which North Woodstock is just
Right
not too
next
far
to,
down
yeah.
the road.
And it said instead of Thornton or, what was it, Ashford?
Yeah, it's
Which, maybe that is that. It just says they
Concord
passed a sign.
Concord is south of here.
So it said that's when they woke up, was driving past the sign of Concord, 17 miles.
And they had a nice car. So this is how it looked when it's about 200 feet high. And this is what it supposedly looked like when it was about 100 feet over the highway descending toward the field. There's Betty and Barney Hill. Now, to me, don't Barney Hill look like the guy from The Ladies' Man and Grown Ups? Grown Ups 2. Thought that was funny.
What?
What? So here is some more clippings of Missing Time, Dreams, and Hypnosis. And then also, First Close Encounter of the Third Kind, Abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. You can see if you look right in the middle of that newspaper clipping in the middle of the kind of the yellowish brown one, you'll see in the middle of that paper is Betty and Barney Hill. So that last clipping that we showed you about the dreams and the missing time and stuff to the right, it said that the first close encounter
Thank you.
happened 500 feet southeast of this gas station. Yet 500 feet southeast of this gas station puts it right over here behind me. We know that's not even remotely where that plaque stood, and it's not close to the Indian Head. So, I don't know. We'll ask Renee about it when she comes out the gas station. But to me, 500 feet southeast is not the same location. So, either the articles that was put up here at the gas station were wrong, or the articles somewhere else was wrong. So that last thing I was telling them that we showed them in the gas station, where it said the dreams of missing time, the article board right next to it said that the first documented close encounter of the third kind happened 500 feet southeast of this gas station, which is right over there. That's nowhere near the plaque we stopped at earlier or the Indian Head Resort and Trail. So who's right and who's wrong?
So I wonder if the Indian Head, like that plaque, is where he got out the car, maybe? Got back in the car because it said he sped away. And I wonder if this is where he made it before they blacked out.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Why one would claim that, but then the gas station's articles would claim that it was 500 feet south. Because, I mean, 500 feet southeast of here is only right over there. It's like maybe a quarter mile, I think, is 500 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's just right down over there.
That would make the most sense. Like, the sign is kind of letting you know, like, hey, this is where he would have gotten out, where the spaceship would have came down. And then the story says he got back in the car, like, terrified they were going to be taken, and zoomed away. And then they started hearing the noises from the trunk, and that's the last thing they remember.
Okay.
So that would put them being over here, maybe, if that's the way the story really goes, if that's the path.
Okay, that makes sense then.
Another thing that's funny is, like, after the abductions, Betty claims to have continually, like, saw UFOs. Like, I think the year was like 77 or something that she reported that she was, like, taking her mom to the doctor and randomly saw one, like, twice in that same trip. Maybe they had like probed her with something and were stalking Betty.
Now, some of what she claims, though, the way she describes it, sounds like an airplane. Because you said with flashing red and green lights, that's what an airplane has on each side of it. One side is red and one side is green, and they flash.
Yeah.
The fact that she saw thousands.
No, it didn't say thousands. It said hundreds of encounters. Like, you know, of seeing them like hundreds of times after her abduction.
Well, either she was seeing airplanes because wasn't at one time Barney trying to tell her that what they were originally seeing was an airplane because that's what he figured. Blah.
I mean, originally when they started seeing the weird lights, he was like, no, it's. So he said it was either a satellite at one point, and then he was like, maybe it's an airplane, and then he thought maybe it was a helicopter.
Well, I mean,
he was trying to think of anything.
Well, true, you're trying to debunk it, but I'm saying if she didn't know what an airplane looked like in the sky, and she's seeing hundreds of these things after being abducted, she's either A, has been probed and they're following her.
I think maybe, or she's having a little PTSD and she just thinks she saw.
Yeah, she's having PTSD, and really what she's seeing is airplanes. Since how she's describing them as red and green flashing lights on each side, that's an airplane. So it sounds to me like a lot of PTSD and looking for something and claiming airplanes are something that they're not.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, well, that does it for this exit with Betty and Barney Hill. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
And let us know, do you believe they were really abducted, or do you believe something else?
And let us know, have you ever been abducted? Have you ever had a close encounter of any kind with a UFO or a little green or gray man? Or maybe a tall, slender gray man? Let us know, either way, in the comments. All right. So we'll catch you guys down the road at the next exit.
Keep it spooky.
Later.